Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, creator and founder of UnWoke.Academy with another weekly Wednesday. This one pre-recorded. I actually have a lunch later today at noon, Wednesday, May 27th. So early in the morning, I am hopping in front of a camera and pre-recording. And yes, I have intentionally left my hair unstyled today. Actually, that's a lead-in to a point that I want to make. Recently, I had opportunity to go shopping with my wife and was looking for hair product. Yes, my hair is naturally wavy when unstyled, but I was looking for different hair product that I might use. And in a discussion with my wife, I was looking at different products because I don't really spend a lot of time discerning and looking at the different products and different brands, etc. But my wife generally does, so I trust her opinion on these things. But she did something really interesting and fast and very telling that got me thinking. As I'm looking through all the different bottles of hair product that I might use, my wife grabbed her phone and in moments brought up an app that talked about the quality of the product, of the goods inside the product, the ingredients. And it rates them 1 through 5. And so in moments, she was able to look at various different possible products that I might purchase and put into my hair. And yes, I am of a certain age where now I actually care a great deal. Well, actually, I kind of have for years about the quality of things like skincare products and what I put in my hair, etc. And I try to make healthy choices because, frankly, as a gentleman of a certain age, I'd like to keep my hair. It dawned on me a long time ago, I probably should pay attention to the quality of the ingredients and potential harms of cheap stuff that I might put into my hair that might work well, but maybe proves harmful. Which brings me around to UnWoke.Academy and some of the evolution and intention of the work that we do here. If you have been following long enough, you may know that some years ago, I got to be friends with a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Black. Dr. Black's wife, Diane Black, was the first head of finance in Congress some years ago. And Dr. David Black, in addition to some other things he was doing in his life, including labs and certain companies that he owned, he started something called Second Vote. Second Vote, while it ran, was a spectacular web-based organization that had about 12 years worth of data on tracking what I now refer to as the woke in the world of corporate America. And they had a very good following, a very active and robust database, as I said. So they had 5 different metrics that they weighed corporate behavior on and then reported on those. And the intention, it's my understanding, was to create an app where right before walking into a store to fill in the blank, buy coffee, buy tennis shoes, shop, you name it, you could bring up a company and see what the impact of that company would be. You've heard me talk about places like Costco, where I don't shop anymore, and Starbucks, where I've chosen not to purchase coffee anymore because I refuse to give money to corporations that behave badly. They misbehave in harmful and destructive ways that damage American and Western society. So that's a decision that I've made for myself through the research that I've done. Well, Second Vote, before closing their doors, unfortunately, some years ago, had the intention of building an app onto their phone. And I, to this day, am in love with that idea. To give people an app that they could easily have on their phone. And if they're heading into a sporting goods store or frequenting a restaurant, frankly, I'm going to interject the hope that more people start deferring again, or not deferring, no, start attending and going to local, small, family-owned restaurants again. That, generally speaking, in my experience, is where the quality is and not these mass chains. But if you're going into a chain anything and it is publicly traded, I'd love to have an app where there's a trackable database and then rate them going forward. And so if they're an organization that's advocating for something that you may not like, I'm just going to use one of many possible examples, supporting Second Amendment rights, supporting First Amendment rights, maybe a pro-life stance, or if they are one of those companies, and there's a local grocery store chain that I've been tracking for years that supports abortion tourism. They actually have some $6,000 or something that they give to young girls willing to go and kill their babies. And for a long time, it didn't matter where it was, that would fly these young ladies places in order to kill babies. That is, in my book, morally reprehensible, and it's not the sort of company that I would like to endorse, encourage, or sponsor in any way. So the intention, and I'm just sort of teasing this out for purposes of discussion, I've done actually a few times now, I've done some research into what it would cost. And if we can get to the point where UnWoke.Academy and the financial PMA has the sort of budget for it, it would be delightful if we could build an app and then put together that database of information. By the way, going back to Dr. David Black and Second Vote and the work that they did, I ended up meeting and talking to the leaders, the ownership team, and I got to know many of the people that were doing the research and reporting on those companies for Second Vote. I made the comment early on when I found out that he was trying to find a buyer for Second Vote, that if he didn't find the targets that he was looking for that brand, for the data, for everything Second Vote that they had built over the course of, I want to say it was 12 years, that I am a resource and that I would pick up the mantle of that and run with it. Well, ultimately, there were a few nibbles, but he did not find what he was looking for and had other avenues that he was pressed to address, and ended up giving me the Second Vote database. So it is something that I have in my possession. Every once in a while, I bring it up. It's a little bit dated now because it's been mothballed for a few years, but it is something that would be worth considering breathing some fresh life into and bringing it back out for we the public. And if we get to the point where we can encourage people to get in that habit, and let's face it, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of, I guess I'll call it gamification of shopping. Those frequent shopper cards, and people are constantly using geolocation on their smart devices to try to report on where they are and collect perks and benefits and all those kinds of things. And I have comments on that I'll say for another day. But what if we could tie all that together and encourage people to maybe nudge their buying behavior, their know what you own kind of address their value system with where they donate, invest, and spend their money, because that is a constant thread of conversation around UnWoke.Academy. We want to encourage people to know what you're buying with your money. So if you're going to places like Costco, where they are continuing to train their employees and staff to operate on racist premises, and places like Starbucks that routinely leans heavily left, anti-police, have a history of very far left agenda, and they fairly openly push it from the corporate level. So if you're like me and don't want to encourage those things because they are harmful and destructive, if you agree with me and that analysis and the reporting that we do at UnWoke.Academy, the thought is to create an app and drive that out to the public, because over time, if we could make that fun, engaging, interesting, get people in the habit of doing that, then anywhere you're looking at, virtually anywhere, you could bring up the app, look at the corporate behavior, find out if they're publicly traded or privately owned, and find out a little bit at a glance about their corporate behavior. Of course, we can't hit every company out there, but we could hit a lot, and we can have an influence. So just like we talk about proxy voting, and if that's unfamiliar to you, I don't fault you. Not many people, not enough people, talk about the importance and significance of proxy voting. We've done several episodes, including the episode that was just released last week in an interview with Matt and Drew from Inspire Advisors, and Inspire Advisors' intention of building out their influence in the proxy voting world. All of that stuff is super, super important. So if we, the people, conservative values, patriotic, America-loving, pro-West people, can use the money that we spend and invest wisely, We can have an influence. That's been proven. It's a matter of organizing. So the app thing is something that I am keenly interested in. Now, switching subjects because there's something else that I want to cover. There's a video that was brought to my attention that was put together by a gentleman by the name of John Stossel, Jonstossel, John Stossel. He is a news reporter. I've liked him for years. I follow his content, and he puts out really great, I won't call them short form videos because they're usually maybe around 15 minutes. Short form, I think anymore is usually 2 to 3, but these are great, easy to watch, short-ish videos, usually around 10 to 15 minutes that cover really important topics. And there's one that I'm not exactly sure when it came out, but it was just recently brought to my attention called An Inconvenient Scientist, where he covers a gentleman by the name of, I have to look it up here, his name is Roger Pielke. Roger Pielke Jr. is a college professor who worked in climate reporting, a climatologist, I think is what they are referred to as. And this is a gentleman who had a long history of a great high-level recognition throughout government and academia, and he is somebody who rebuked the narrative. So this gentleman came out and said, well, wait a minute, hold on. It looks to me like the media and politicians and the left are overplaying this whole conversation about the climate change and climate change agenda. Well, fairly quickly, he was deplatformed. He was attacked by even the White House and different academia and politicians. The news media came after him. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's the playbook. There are people out there. You've seen Frank McCormick, who came out with an education background and started to call out K through 12 education. I believe he's based in Illinois, somewhere in the Chicago area. Frank McCormick, and I think he calls his podcast Chalkboard Heresy. He's worth following and finding. I actually had a conversation with him a few years ago. Really interesting gentleman with an education background who said, well, wait a minute. Why are we taking our focus off of traditional K through 12 education, and why all the harmful, divisive, woke content in schools? And for that, he's been ridiculed, attacked, deplatformed, you name it. Same thing applies in healthcare. You have people like Dr. Simone Gold, Dr. Del Bigtree, and many, many others, Dr. Zelenko, who started during COVID, many of them started during or as a result of COVID, calling out what's happening in big pharma and the connection between big pharma, hospitals, and politicians. And there appears to be some collusion between them that push a certain narrative. But the common thread throughout each of those are people willing to say, wait a minute, hold on, this doesn't seem right. This seems like there's some inappropriate behavior going on here, and I want to tap the brakes and call out and lend a different perspective, and very quickly got deplatformed. And that brings us back to UnWoke.Academy. I'm not alone in this. However, I will say that starting about 6 years ago, I've been deplatformed from LinkedIn. LinkedIn was a platform where I had a very large following. I was actually spending money through something they call their Sales Navigator platform. That was costing me about $880 a year that I was spending on LinkedIn, and had a very large and growing, very robust and active audience that we interacted with, including many of our clients. So we were doing a lot through LinkedIn, but I brought up some things that LinkedIn didn't like, and poof, overnight, they deplatformed me. That is common, and as I said, it's part of the playbook to try to silence opposing viewpoints. It's up to us to push through and make a point of listening to those people with opposing viewpoints. You may disagree with this gentleman on the climate issue. You might disagree with some of those people with health, medicine, pharmaceutical, and healthcare background who disagree with some of the mandated protocols that are now commonly, growingly become edicts. They become top-down dictates from corporate mega hospital structures. And for my part, I began to see a long time ago a dwindling, a lacking, a moving away from independent analysis and critical thinking on the part of people who work in finance, and deferring instead to this top-down dictatorship where Wall Street globalist bank types simply tell people how they must behave, what their sales agenda is, what objectives they have, and what to sell, basically. So I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. In my book, especially because my releasing and starting UnWoke.Academy, well, it actually started a little bit before COVID, but much of the growth of it grew at around the same time I and many others were challenging and calling into question COVID protocols. So I use the analogy of the shots. There are many, many doctors during COVID who were perfectly willing to try to inject as many people as possible and weren't taking the time to ask questions about the medical implications, the side effects, and wait for research to see what would happen. Even pregnant women were somehow not even considered in the equation, and there were very few people out there willing to say, hold on a minute, maybe we should wait a little bit and see what the implications of these shots are. I hate to say it, but the indications are that the motivation behind that was very, very financial. I'm told, and I have some glimpses of research in the medical arena, that doctors and their practices were financially incentivized. If they had certain percentages of people with certain numbers of shots, they could make hundreds of thousands or millions of extra dollars per year in kickbacks from pharmaceutical. The same holds true, unfortunately, in the world of education for people who work in the education industrial complex. And certainly the same holds true in and around Wall Street. So people who work in finance get kickbacks. Life is easier if they don't have to do the research and ask questions. So in that world, in that arena, it's unfortunate, but it's true when we say that there are many, many people who simply act as sales agents, unquestioning sales agents. That's how we got to where we are with the mass consolidation of markets, meaning so many different mutual funds and exchange-traded funds and things like them that have virtually identical ingredients. It's not okay for people who work in finance to have gotten to the point where they're rubber stamping whatever they're told to sell to as many people as possible and making big, big money on it and not asking the appropriate questions. Is this appropriate for the client? Is it properly diversified? And am I actually helping the client? Those are critical questions that for bad actors don't seem to materialize. For the good guys, for people willing to ask those questions, I suggest those are the people you should be following. I hope that you follow UnWoke.Academy and the Financial PMA, and please click that like button and share with others around. Let's spread the message. As I said, I don't expect everybody to agree with everything that I say. However, I do want to engage in conversation, and I suspect that people who are willing to dig down and try to find truth will understand that there is truth in most everything that I'm saying, as uncomfortable as it may make people feel. That is something that I will call an inconvenient truth in the world of finance. This has been another weekly Wednesday live stream broadcast with Jonathan Broadbent. Thanks for tuning in.